Chapter 25. Carnivores. Oi! Hurry up. Follow me, Natasha said. Where are you taking me? They didn't answer, just waved him forward. Silas felt more like a scaredy cat the farther he trekked into the hills, following the twins. They moved at a rapid clip, clearly familiar with the path. The underbrush scratched at his shins, drawing blood, while rocks threatened to twist his ankle. He used the staff to keep his balance and find solid footing. They hiked farther away from the rope bridge. The terrain grew wilder and rockier, winding up the mesa. The trail dissolved into wilderness as a faint chill settled into the air. The sun moved lower, elongating the shadows cast by the scraggly trees and signaling that nightfall was coming soon. They crested the hill and came to a halt. Silas frowned in confusion. They'd come to a wide plateau. While the rest of the Pride Lands boasted prickly trees and scraggly underbrush growing in sand, this place was rocky and destitute of any vegetation. No birds flew through the skies. It looked completely desolate and bereft of any life, but then he spotted paw prints. 3 sets of them. Coyotes, he wondered? Or maybe hyenas? That thought jarred him. He remembered how the 3 hyenas stalked him the other night. All he knew was that nothing good lurked here. But the twins were undeterred. They continued onward. Mist clung to the air, steaming out of vents in the ground, giving the whole place a supernatural vibe. Water burbled up from the vents too, trickling through the rocky ground in thin rivulets. Careful, that's super hot, Natasha said. It's geothermal, from deep underground. That means it comes from lava, Timothy added. She just likes to use big words. Magma, not lava, Natasha corrected. What are we doing here? Silas asked, feeling unsettled by this strange, unforgiving place. Neither of the twins answered with words. Instead, Natasha pointed straight ahead. Elephant graveyard. Silas gulped hard at the sight of the familiar words carved into the wooden sign that was staked into the ground. It was so weather-beaten from wind and sand that it was nearly illegible. This is the elephant graveyard? Silas said in surprise. Now he could see why this place was a place that only the bravest campers could venture. He scanned the flat plateau at the top of the hill, which looked like it could exist on Mars. You betcha, Natasha said. But why is it called that? Silas asked, curious but also fearing the answer. Over there. Look, Natasha gestured ahead. Silas followed her gaze, then startled back. He'd thought they were just strange rocks, but now it became clear that they were bones. Whatever animals that they came from was enormous. The ribs arced out of the ground, half buried. How'd they get here? Silas asked, recalling his books. Elephants don't live in North America. Maybe from woolly mammoths, Natasha said with a shrug. From back in prehistoric times, when all the continents were connected by land bridges. We learned about it in school. Yeah, they're like the ancestors of elephants, Timothy added helpfully. Only they had hair, 'cause back then it was the Ice Age and super cold. That's right, Silas said. I read about it in my books, after the dinosaurs died out. Yep, that's what we think, Natasha said. But nobody knows for sure how the bones got here. That mystery, not to mention the graveyard itself, gave the whole place a disturbing feeling. Silas swallowed hard. What are we doing here? He tried to keep his fear under control, reminding himself that he had the staff for protection, but it felt like a flimsy defense. He tightened his grip until his fingers felt numb. Well, you asked what happened to your aunt, Natasha said, gesturing around the graveyard. This is where they found her body. Her body? Silas said in a strangled voice. Suddenly, graveyard took an even darker meaning. You mean she was already dead? The twins nodded grimly. But why was she here? Silas choked out, feeling like a cat was clawing his tongue. Right. Nobody really knows, Natasha went on. She knelt down and sifted rocks through her hands, coming up with a piece of turquoise. She went out hiking with Zazu, then never came back. When they finally found her, there wasn't much left. She trailed off, not wanting to say any more. Silas felt his heart lurch, but he needed answers. How'd they find her? He asked, imagining that it hadn't been easy. Oh, it was Zazu, Timothy said, peering up at the misty sky, seemingly hoping the parrot would reappear. He always went with her everywhere. He flew back to camp and led them to Scarlett's body. Natasha set her lips. Yeah, we heard Raffi talking to Mom about it. He said that when they found her, it looked like a wild animal got to her. A hungry one, Timothy added with a shudder. That freaked Silas out even more. He remembered the hyenas and the paw prints. His heart raced faster, as if trying to run out of his chest. It took him a moment to find his voice. But why didn't you tell me? He asked, feeling hurt. Mom warned us not to talk about it, Natasha said, looking down at her feet. She was afraid that it would cause bad press. Or worse, scare your family away. Yeah, when we heard that Scarlett had a brother who was coming to fix up the camp and reopen it, like back in the old days, Timothy said, it was like our prayers got answered. My mom didn't want to ruin it, and neither did we. Sorry we didn't tell you sooner, Natasha said, exchanging guilty looks with her brother. Timothy nodded. It wasn't lying, but it was sort of lying. I accept your apologies, Silas said. The twins brightened, but then the somber mood descended on them again. The sun set lower, and the air cooled considerably. A lone coyote took up its mournful howl in the distance. But still, Silas didn't want to leave yet. He had one important question burning hot in his mind. Do you think the same thing that happened to me and my dad maybe happened to my aunt? He asked in a soft voice, like it wasn't really an accident. His words hung in the air before the mist stole them away, like a ghost swallowing the sound. The twins looked at him with fresh worry lighting up their hazel eyes. What do you mean? Natasha asked. You don't think it was just a terrible accident? Yeah, who would want to hurt her? Timothy added, sounding equally unsure. Right. I don't know, Silas said, feeling frustrated. He kicked at the loose rocks. He didn't have any proof of his theory, let alone any idea who would want to hurt his family. Just a bad feeling that there was a lot more to the story than they knew. Ring! Both of the twins' phones pinged at the same time. Then Silas felt his phone chirp in his pocket. Their parents were summoning them back for dinner. Why did every investigation only lead to more mysteries? Nothing made sense. Silas wanted to stay and snoop for more clues, but he didn't have a choice. Plus, it would be dangerous to stay out in the elephant graveyard after dark. The paw prints were a warning. The twins' word echoed through his head. It looked like a wild animal got her. A hungry one. Before their parents could text again, they each wrote back, on my way, and hurried back, moving faster since they were hiking more downhill. But they clambered back over the bridge. They hid the rusty saw in some brush, making sure it was covered with sand. It was an important clue. Then they wobbled in tandem back across the rope bridge. Zazu! Timothy called to the sky, turning around. Zazu! Zazu! Please come home! But no bird answered his calls. Don't worry, we'll find him, Silas said, patting his shoulder. I'm sure he'll return soon. They turned to leave, but Silas glanced at the archway warning sign. Suddenly, it hit him. Wait, remember what Zazu used to say? He asked, pointing to it. They imitated him and called, Danger, Danger. Oh, danger! Danger! Beware! The arch! Keep out! Exactly, Silas said. Think Zazu was trying to warn me about the bridge? It's possible, Natasha said, sounding unsure. But he always talked a lot of nonsense. Yeah, even before your aunt died, Timothy added. Mom says they were both eccentric. Whatever that means, he shrugged. Dictionary, remember? Natasha said. It means unconventional or strange. Timothy brightened. Oh, yeah, that sounds like Scarlet. Well, I wish I could have spent more time with her, Silas said, feeling a stab of regret. It felt like guilt, but deeper and sadder, as if you'd lost something that you could never get back, no matter how hard you tried. I'm really sorry I didn't know her like you all did. I'm sorry too, Natasha said. At least you got to know us. And Zazu too. Maybe his calling was a clue? Or maybe it was a bunch of random words? Who knows? Silas let out a deep sigh. Again, more mysteries piled up than answers. Ring, ring. Their phones all pinged again. This time the messages were more demanding, with their parents threatening to send out the search brigade if they didn't return soon. Sometimes parental worrying felt suffocating, and sometimes it felt like love, though maybe they were the same thing. This time it felt like comfort and safety. Silas realized. He was grateful for his parents, even if they didn't always understand him, and worse, had given him a little brother who was supposed to be his best friend, but instead terrorized their whole family. Hurry, we better get back, Natasha said. Let's look for more clues tomorrow. But all through dinner in the mess hall, cheese enchiladas with black beans and green chili that were beyond delicious despite the spicy burn that lingered along after, which only ice-cold lemonade could quench, Silas felt unsettled. He couldn't stop thinking about Zazu and the rusty saw. One thing was clear. The bridge's breaking wasn't an accident. The ropes were severed by that saw they found. That made him shiver. Then his thoughts leapt to the ghostly lion named Scar and the book from the shelf. But how did it all connect? Only half paying attention, he brushed his teeth, and Dad wished him good night from the sofa. He trudged to bed, deeply lost in thought. The mystery cycled through his head over and over. The twins were right. He hadn't gotten the staff and opened the chest until after the accident on the bridge. That meant it wasn't Scar, as he was still locked away at that time. So, who sabotaged the bridge then? The harder he thought, the less sense it all made. He sighed in frustration for the 100th time. He took the old book about Scar to bed with him, flipping through the pages again for more clues. He ran his fingers over the title that was etched into the hardcover. The Legend of Scar. Silas stopped on an elaborate full-page image of the lion lounging on the throne after he caused his brother's death and his nephew to run away in exile. Thinking that it was all his fault, Scar stared out of the page with his eerie green eyes. He was sharp and sinister. Boo, he seemed to growl. Silas flinched at that, but then calmed. It was only a picture, after all. The lion in the book couldn't hurt him. That was why he loved books. Reading was the safest way to have adventures and learn about dangerous animals. Relaxing, he flipped to the next page. Then he spotted something that made him sit up in alarm. 3 creatures with bristled fur knelt in front of Scar on his throne, pledging their allegiance to him. And not just any creatures. Hyenas. Silas remembered how the 3 hyenas had stalked and chased him home the other night. Could they be the same ones? But how? With a deep shudder, Silas shut the book, thinking better of trying to read before bed. He flipped off his light and tried to sleep, but he tossed and turned, moving in and out of dreams where he was falling or being hunted. Then something startled him awake. Thump, thump, silence. Thump, thump. They were drum beats. Thin moonlight streamed through the curtains like pale shards. His window was shut tight. The air was stuffy, circulated by the ceiling fan churning overhead. Silas strained his ears, listening in the darkness of his room. He remembered the photographs in the mess hall, with the campers banging drums. He tensed up, worrying that it was happening again. The silence endured and lengthened. "Just a bad dream," he said, without surprise. Lately, his dreams had been filled with them. His nights had been filled with them, not to mention all the freaky things that happened that day. He settled back into bed, accidentally knocking the book about Scar onto the floor with a solid thud. It splayed open to the 2-page spread of the lion lounging on his ill-gotten throne. Scar's eyes started glowing, lighting up the room with an unnatural emerald light. "No, that can't be," Silas gasped. "It's only a book. It's not real." As if in response, the lion's eyes fixed on Silas. Thump, thump, silence. Thump, thump. The eerie drum beats started up again, louder this time. They reverberated through the night, and then, as if joining the chorus, creepy laughter echoed through the campground. The hyenas were back. Silas sat up in bed and pinched himself hard. But this was no dream. He was fully awake. That was when something worse happened. Scar reached his paw out from the pages of the book and slowly dragged his claws over the floorboards. Scratch. They cut deep gouges into the wood with that terrible sound. Then, with a growl, Scar stepped out of the pages of the book. "No, please, leave me alone." Silas tried to scream, but his voice came out as barely a whisper. He cowered back in fear, unable to believe his eyes or ears, as the thumping drum beats and blood-curdling laughter reached a fever pitch outside his window. Then Scar grew taller and leered down at him. The ghostly lion could only be seen in shadow. Aside from his green eyes, they glowed like 2 fiery emeralds lit ablaze. His unmistakable voice rang out. "Sweet cub, don't be afraid."